everyone, and welcome to Ecopsych EXP, where we take a stroll through the forest of eco-psychological themes in video games. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Casey Edgerton, and I am a doctoral candidate at Veritas Graduate Institute. My core message is that video games can and do foster ecological empathy and combat apathy and doomism. I love video games, and I see them as a force for so much good, and I hope that this always comes through in my videos. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the incredible game development team I was fortunate enough to be able to interview for this episode, Ground Game Atelier. Ground was formed in 2020 as an independent game development team with Yite, the creative lead and art director, and Elias, the designer and technical director, at its core. It was later on in January 2022 that the team incorporated in Spain as Ground Game Atelier. Yite comes from an extensive background in motion graphics, design, and animation, while Elias is an experienced programmer and game developer. Completing the core team is Gabrielle, who joined in 2023. They are also aided by wonderful collaborators who frequently provide their help and services, all pouring their love and passion into making something special. The time I have left started as a personal project on Yite's messy desk. He has stated that it was conceived as a love letter to the experimental, forgotten classics of the past and the history of the RPG and adventure genres. It soon became apparent that the project had much more potential than what a single person could achieve, and thus the core team grew to fulfill those expectations. The time I have left is steadily shaping up since then, and it is already more than half complete. Despite this, it is still a self-funded project developed by a small independent team with no publisher support. To gather the necessary support to complete it, the team launched a Kickstarter campaign on November 21st, 2024. If the campaign succeeds, the game is planned to be released in the first half of 2026. Now, let's get into it. In 6 hours, you will be dead. It is fated to be. Even so, is there anything you would like to do before the end? A woman with only 6 hours of life remaining searches for a way out of an underground city. Follow her time-driven escape adventure. Explore and uncover the secrets of a desolate complex, and face grotesque visions of death in a turn-based combat system with an action twist. The time I have left is a time-driven exploration RPG with a big focus on storytelling. The player takes on the role of Aline, a woman affected by a mysterious condition that marks her for certain death, the Miasma. Players will guide her in a race against time to escape from an enormous underground complex, Colony 7. During her escape, Aline suffers from unnerving visions of death, presented in the form of a turn-based combat system with active elements. To survive these near-death experiences, the player must use all the tools at their disposal to evade these liminal creatures until they lose the will to chase her. As the game progresses, more skills and offensive techniques will become available, opening up new ways to approach these encounters. The first question I asked Yite was, the time I have left centers around Aline's escape from the underground city of Colony 7, marked for death by a mysterious phenomenon called the miasma. How do you think this sense of inevitable death affects Aline's relationship with her environment, and how does the city of Colony 7 reflect her inner emotional state? He responded, despite the efforts of its creators to build a place where people could feel comfortable living underground, Colony 7 is not an ideal place to live. Even less so if you live there alone and under the pressure of a potential sudden death. Most of us would be very stressed in a situation like that, but Aline seems apathetic, calm, and almost accepting of her fate. This external behavior hides some regrets that start to become very visible right after the beginning of the game. Colony 7 is silent, hollow, and sad, a memory of better times waiting to disappear. Aline starts the game sharing most of these traits, but the experiences she has during the game will undoubtedly change her. I then asked, the game explores Aline's battle against visions of death and grotesque creatures. How do you think these visions mirror the way we often face our fears and mortality in real life? And how can confronting these fears in a game setting provide insight into our own psychological resilience? The response: since she is the main playable character, we experience these visions mainly from her point of view, but they are common to all the affected, other people suffering from the miasma. We will get more perspectives through the game's database feature, which includes short story fragments about the game's concepts and characters. We wanted to show the players many different takes regarding the themes of the game. You will normally experience at least two different perspectives and see how two individuals in a similar situation reacted to the same thing. Aline's perspective is one of resilience and willpower, of fighting for what you want and finding your own way in life, however short your time may be. Others may have given in without a fight, accepted their deaths in peace, succumbed to desperation without being able to even move. You may agree with one, all, or none of them, but our goal is having all these perspectives and letting the player reflect on themselves and build their own answer. I asked, the time-driven mechanic of the game emphasizes the urgency of escaping the city. How do you see this constant pressure of time affecting Aline's ability to make decisions? And how does this reflect the way human beings navigate limited resources and ecological crises in the real world? We built the whole game around the timer exactly for that. Game design has played with time limits since gaming's infancy up until today, putting pressure on the player, limiting playtime, pushing the competitive aspect of racing or puzzle games, etc. Having limited time gives weight to every action you take and forces you to adapt to the situation. Mistakes can be made and secrets may be left undiscovered, but completing your goal within your time limit feels great. We can see this in everyday life too, in things like modern project management and sports. Despite the potential of a time-driven exploration/story experience, narrative games tend to avoid using time as a mechanic, mainly for two reasons. It's very difficult to build a game around a time limit without forcing the player to repeat the same content multiple times. And narrative adventure players don't want to feel forced to rush through the game, even less so multiple times. For the time I have left, we wanted to change the common conception of time limits in games from, I don't have time so I have to go fast, to, this is the time I have, how should I spend it? We created a chapter-based structure where each chapter/area has its own time limit within the global limit of 6 hours. You will find the exit of the chapter long before the time limit expires, and you will have to decide if you want to keep going with the story or keep exploring and learn more about Colony 7 in the remaining time. The twist is that moving on will adjust the timer and you will lose all the time you don't spend either way. Deciding how to spend the time we have is our choice, for good and for bad. The time I have left is not a dynamic narrative where your decisions will change the story or the ending organically, but it gives you the option to engage with it at different levels and get something in return. You can rush through the game, but you will lose time anyway, so why not spend it on exploring and learning more about Colony 7 and getting new skills for combat in the process? As players progress, Aline gains new abilities to help her navigate the world. How do you think this growth, both in terms of skills and understanding, mirrors the idea of personal transformation when faced with environmental or existential challenges? Yite responded, that was precisely our goal. Despite its numerous RPG systems, the game was designed as an adventure game at its core. That means that the primary goal is to tell a story using all tools at our disposal, including cinematics, environmental storytelling, text, and of course, game design. Generally, RPG lovers are very receptive to good stories, but adventure game fans are less open to the idea of interacting with complex turn-based combat systems and other RPG mechanics. There are also many RPG players that have a systems-first mentality and will just skip over the narrative to find the next big boss. Our core idea for the design was to push all these different potential players to interact with the aspects of the game they find less appealing, in ways that break the norm. In order to get the whole story, you will need to face some encounters. In order to experience combat at its fullest, you will need to interact with the environment and the narrative. I would say that the game is not mirroring reality, but drawing directly from it. The database system speaks directly to the player, bypassing Aline. Aline is coming up with new ideas to keep on with her escape as she explores, but is not reading omniscient narrations about the miasma. The player is. But both of them are getting stronger in the process. Knowledge is power, as they say. The more you explore and engage with the environment, the more story you unravel, and the stronger Aline gets in combat without having to grind for experience. I asked, Colony 7 is a desolate, abandoned space, yet Aline is not alone. The presence of visions and creatures from the miasma suggests a haunted, lingering environment. How does the concept of environmental trauma, where a place is forever marked by past suffering, play into the narrative of the game? The response: it is an important part of it. You could say one of the most important aspects of the whole narrative. Colony 7 tells multiple stories, not only through the unlockable text fragments, but directly from its environment. Desolate streets, empty rooms and commerces, maintenance corridors, everything contributes to a bigger story. You could tell people lived there, and we put extra effort to depict various situations through the environment alone. How would different people react to the miasma? What social groups and communities would arise from such a phenomenon? What kind of facilities and services would a society like that require? All the areas in the colony are forever marked by its residents in one way or another, and we would love for players to piece together as much as they can by the end of the game. The game explores themes of willpower and survival as Aline faces her inevitable end. In an ecological context, how do you see this constant struggle for survival as a metaphor for human resilience in the face of environmental destruction? He responded, I would say that the themes explored are not of literal survival, but more close to the will to live or finding a reason to be. It's a more introspective message, more focused on the individual than the collective. Despite this, the environment plays a big part in how we find that reason. Like Aline and other characters in the story, being faced with extreme adversity and unavoidable demise will probably destroy the strongest will to live. But that doesn't mean that the world has ended just yet. No matter how insignificant something may feel to another person, we find our own reasons to find our worth in the world, and we wanted to convey that in the game from the eyes of many different types of people. I then asked, the concept of the miasma as a mysterious and invisible force affecting Aline's fate is central to the game. How do you see this invisible force as a metaphor for the unseen or slow-moving environmental or health threats we face, such as pollution or climate change, that we often cannot directly perceive but which still shape our lives? Miasma is an unknown affliction that threatens humans, so yes, there is a connection. As you say, there are many parallels with environmental and health threats that we cannot see, and how humans can face and come together against something that is obviously dangerous, but whose real impact can't be completely understood by everyone. The story of The Time I Have Left happens in an alternate present where society has come together under a single governmental entity known as the Worldwide Alliance. Despite reaching an almost utopian society, there are still problems and various environmental issues that come with an ideal human world, more so when miasma appears. I can't give a lot of details, but let's say we wanted to do a double exercise of exploring current threats we are now facing in the real world, and also look into the potential threats that could come by our hand, even if we manage to solve our current problems. The game's narrative includes moments of introspection as Aline uncovers the hidden truths of Colony 7. How does the process of uncovering these truths relate to the way we, as a society, must confront uncomfortable truths about environmental degradation and our role in it? At first, Aline knows more than the player, so there is a disconnect between both entities. Aline may be difficult to understand at first because Colony 7 is not a new, unknown place for her like it is for the one playing. She moves around knowing more than the player. She has a better understanding of the world she is in. As the player gets more familiar with the environment and unlocks narrative fragments, pieces of the narrative will start to fall into place. Then, the player and Aline will both face new areas unknown to both, leveling the field, and, after a while, roles will reverse and the player will have an even better perspective on the events of the game in both the real and the mysterious liminal world where the creatures roam. This dialogue between player and character is important to reinforce the message of the game and also allows us to give the player a lot more information than the main character is getting. Since the basis of the fictional world of The Time I Have Left is still our world, getting various perspectives on the problems of the society of the game and being able to reach informed conclusions could also be a very helpful skill in the real world. I asked, The Time I Have Left explores Aline's journey with the looming certainty of death. How do you see death as a psychological catalyst, motivating her to push forward, uncover truths, and take action? In what ways do you think the awareness of mortality can inspire growth, change, and transformation, both in the game and in real life? Yite responded, the project was created precisely around the concept of how the feeling of urgency can push someone to take action. In my case, at least, most of my regrets in life are not tied to doing something and failing, but to inaction. I have many friends like me in that regard, and I am sure that is something quite common. With routine, work, and everyday life, sometimes it feels like time is not actually moving, so it's easy to look back and think, I'm this old already? It's when you start thinking about your time running out that you push yourself to do things that you normally wouldn't. I thought of a narrative game that explored the concept from various angles and also put the player in a position where they have to prioritize what's really important themselves. It was actually very difficult to convey to people that time is yours to spend and not something to fight against. We built the game in a way that time is lost even if you rush through the game's areas, because we know the temptation of seeing a timer and having to rush to get to the end as soon as possible is too ingrained in games, sports, and other aspects of daily life. We felt the feeling of moving on with the story and losing some precious time would push people to want to use that time meaningfully, without forcing them, and I really feel that it was a success. The environment and the time I have left plays a crucial role in Aline's journey, with the constant presence of time and death shaping her decisions. How do you see the natural cycle of life, death, and rebirth as a powerful force in the game? How can this cycle, both in the game and in the real world, encourage players to embrace change, adaptability, and hope as part of a larger regenerative process? The response. I can't reveal too much about how the game plays out yet, spoilers, but we put extra attention in framing life as a one-time, finite experience. Good or bad, we want players to think about how they would face their regrets if they knew their world would cease to exist in just a few hours. It's very human to struggle for survival and look forward to eternal life, rebirth, and/or reincarnation, but there is also a positive message to be had in a definitive death that is met with no regrets. Regardless of individual beliefs about the afterlife, we can be certain that we have a life worth living right now and until our last second in this world. There is time to change and improve our lives until the very last second, or so we believe. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your process, intentions, or hopes for this game in the future? The floor is yours. Yite responded, The Time I Have Left is a time-driven, escape-adventure RPG developed by a very small team. It was announced a while back in 2022, but it has been in development for even longer than that. It has been a difficult development, mostly self-funded and without publishing support. As such, progress is slow and there's still many things to do and problems to solve before we can confidently release it, but this game is an important part of our lives that we want to see completed and will definitely release in the future, no matter the setbacks we have to face. Albeit under a fictional premise, the message of the game is very true and close to me, and I hope part of the team's efforts and passions have transferred into the game and can reach our audience once it releases. Try the demo on Steam and let us know what you think about it. I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Yite for his time and incredibly thoughtful responses, as well as the entire Ground Game Atelier team for their passion and commitment to getting their vision out into the world. The demo for The Time I Have Left is currently available to play on Steam and is an atmospheric treat. I definitely recommend it. The full release is hopefully coming soon, so be sure to add it to your wishlist and show them your support. So, let's take a moment to reflect. The Time I Have Left invites players to confront the fragility of life and the constant presence of time. Aline's journey through Colony 7, racing against her impending death, mirrors our own struggles with limited time and resources. The game's focus on decision-making, survival, and emotional growth raises questions about how we choose to spend our time, especially in the face of unavoidable challenges. How do you approach decision-making when faced with time constraints? Do you prioritize immediate goals, or do you take time to explore and understand your surroundings? How does this reflect our real-world responses to crises, like environmental challenges? Once again, please check out the Time I Have Left demo and wishlist it on Steam, and definitely check out their Kickstarter if this game has sparked your interest. Links will be in the description below. What will you do with the time you have left? Join me next time when we'll be sitting down with the End of the Sun team to discuss their Slavic fantasy game, The End of the Sun. Until we meet again, please feel so very free to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, thank you so much for being a part of this little ecosystem.